Okay, I'm going to dive in. I'm having a bit of technical issue, but we'll sort that out. Welcome everybody to Marketo Champion Office Hours. We're ahead of a slide here. This is your champion panel today. I'm Courtney Edwards-Jones. I'm the marketing manager, marketing operations manager at Zora. I'm a Marketo champion, a London Mug co-leader, and Marketo business certified expert and solutions architect. Just did that, which is really exciting. I'm going to hand it over to our champions today to talk, the champions that are answering your questions on the panel, and introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, this is Darshil Shah. I work as a consultant at Deloitte. I'm based out of India. So I started working with Marketo right after graduation. It's been 4 years now and never looked back. So happy to be working with Marketo. I am 2 times certified architect, 3 times certified expert. I co-lead the India virtual mug as well. And I am subject matter expert as well. So excited to be here and looking forward to answering some of your questions and discuss with the panel. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'm Chris Willis. I work for Trimble, and I am a go-to-market operations process leader within our large digital transformation project. I'm 5 times Marketo certified. I am a Marketo subject matter expert, and I've been using Marketo since 2012. So I'm a little bit OG in some regards.
Hi, I'm Jane Musatova. I'm a product marketing manager and marketing ops manager at Willis in Tel Aviv, Israel. I'm the first-time Marketo champion, long-time admin. I've been using Marketo since 2018. And excited to be here along with you guys.
Awesome. Lauren McCormick, VP over at Revenue Pulse, been with Marketo since 2011, 5 times certified, 2-time champ, and a leader, co-leader and founder at the Tucson Marketo user group. I'm super excited to meet everybody on the call today. Thank you so much for coming out, and looking forward to sharing some knowledge and talking about everything Marketo.
That's super exciting. And fun fact, Lauren and I are both Kelly MBAs. I don't think you'll ever be on a Marketo champion call where we can say that.
Yes, and Chris has the coolest shirt. He wins the coolest shirt of the champ forum today, right? So gotta love it. Yes, Natalie, indeed, yes, right? Love it.
I won't lie, this is my favorite piece of Marketo swag.
Yes. Love it.
Agree.
Love it. Awesome, guys. Thanks. Okay. So we do have just a really quick agenda, some house rules to go over before we dive into the questions. And we have a really good assortment of questions, lots of questions that have come in. And then also we're taking questions. I can see already people talking in the chat. I'll jump into that and start to see if there's questions after we get through this first bit. But just to let you guys know, we do have some house rules. So in order to ensure the safety, no self-promotion, don't contact people that you see on this call outside of this user group unless they've consented. Just to know we are recording, so this will be available as well. And if anybody here shares a use case or they talk about specifics to anything, make sure that you don't share that outside of this. It's just here to talk about best practice and tips and tricks and things that we've done. And it's not necessarily to take away word for word anything that we talk about. Like I mentioned, it'll be recorded and it is going to be posted at mugs.marketo.com. So the slides will be posted along with that. And we have really good resources available to you. And any questions that get asked today, we can backfill any resources too, that things come up that we talk about or anything like that. And then you'll get the recording and the slides via email. We have some great opportunities for you guys to get involved in the wider community. So please, if you aren't a member already, join our mug chapter. So this happens monthly. New questions are asked all the time that you guys have sent in. So you'll get those updates about the next office hours and when it's happening and who the panelists are going to be and all of that. So definitely go join us. If you need to gain or update your certification, the details are all going to be in the slides for you on how to do that. And one of the great things about being certified is actually it's one of the qualifications that makes you eligible for applying to be a champion, which we're also going to talk about. So champ applications are open right now. They're open to June 2nd. Like I said, there are a few qualifications, one being that you are certified. So definitely get that certification that we just talked about if you haven't, or re-up it and renew it if you've let it go lax. So that's one of them. And the second one is that you are working actively as a customer of Marketo, and you have an instance, you're using it. As long as if you meet those two qualifications, and I think everybody else on this panel would really encourage you to apply. It's a really incredible program. You get to meet like all these amazing people and share ideas and work closely with the product team. And we could go on and on about it. So if you have specific questions about the champion program, please drop them in the chat so we make sure that we're answering those for you as well. So we're open to talk about that, or reach out to us as well if you have questions about the program and like what it involves and benefits of it and all that as well. But they're open now till June 2nd. So that's the part we definitely want to stress, is get that application in if it's something that you're interested in being a part of. So again, here's our resources for you. And these will be available, lots of them. So this is great. This is a great place to start. And then anything we talk about today will add to this as well. All right. So saying that, I'm going to dive in real quick to our first questions. So we're going to start off with some best practice tips and tricks for you guys. One of the questions we got today was, what are some of your best practices for operational workflows in regards to partitions? And Darshil, you mentioned that you wanted to share some on this.
Yeah, for sure, Courtney. Thank you. So with regards to partition, the first thing that, like, if I'm working with an instance that has multiple partitions, the first thing that I would like to do is, understand the strategy behind it. Like, what are the different audience or groups of people that are going to live in those partitions? And based on that, definitely set up the operational campaigns to like specific lead routing campaigns in their default workspace. And one more call out that I would like to give here is that everyone recommends, like all have recommended people, users to, have the default workspace look like access all the partitions. So you have one area where you can reference all the people at once and operate on them. So there is one tip that I would recommend. And of course, have the lead routing campaign set up in your default workspace so that it applies to everyone. And once they are in your default partition workspace, you route them to the correct partition based on your strategy, based on the fields that determine which partition that the person should be routed to. There's the second thing, and apart from that, regards to the operational campaign, I usually like to divide all the operational campaigns basis the campaigns that apply to everybody in the database versus the campaigns that apply to a section of the database or the particular partition. So the campaigns or the setup that apply to the entire database, I like to house them in the default workspace itself. So for example, a global lead scoring model, a global revenue cycle model, or campaigns, etc. I would definitely, the data normalization campaigns, enrichment campaigns, I would definitely house those campaigns in the default workspace. And the default workspace would, of course, as I said earlier, would be having access to all the person partitions, all the people in the entire database. And then I would like to, I usually prefer breaking down the, partition level campaigns in their own workspaces. So for example, if I have a EMEA workspace that is mapped with the EMEA partition, and I have some sort of campaign, some sort of setup that I need to, apply on only those people that are in EMEA partition, then I would definitely, create those EMEA related campaigns in the EMEA workspace rather than creating those in the default workspace and add a filter saying apply only to the people who are in EMEA partition. I like to, divide my operational setup in very organized manner, if I can say so. Have all the global operational campaigns in the default workspace, then have the rest of the campaigns set up, broken down into different workspaces based on the operations and the partitions that they apply to. So that is what I usually follow, and I never have had any issues most of the times. And apart from that, one call out I would also like to make regarding the person assignment, the person partition assignment specifically. So one that the Marketo has out of the box in the admin under person partition, that applies only to the new people that are getting created from the SOAP API or the CRM. So if you do a list import, the lead assignment rules that you have set up in the admin, they are not gonna work on or execute on those people. A lot of people don't know this, and they usually think like they do not need a specific lead routing campaign setup if they are creating the lead assignment rules in the admin section. But that is not true, as the lead assignment rules only apply to the people getting created from CRM and so API. So definitely create lead routing campaigns in your instance. I hope that was helpful.
No, definitely. This is great. I love best practice too, because it's just going to spark ideas in people that already have certain things built, but then like create fresh new landscape for people that haven't touched it at all. Another best practice question that we came in actually to shoot over to you, Chris, is around attribution and how to use it, how to build it or how to use it effectively.
Thank you, Courtney. So I'm going to answer this question somewhat twofold. So because there's a strategic component to this question and there's a tactical component to this question. So on the strategic side, the first thing I would recommend that you do to use your attribution effectively is essentially answer that question about like, what are you using attribution for? Who are the consumers of your attribution? And ultimately, how is that data going to be used to make decisions in your organization? That's going to drive a lot of the architecture decisions, a lot of the key analytic decisions you're going to make. Because if you're most likely using it for two purposes. So one is to optimize your marketing program so that you're getting efficient use of your spend. You're doing more with less, you're doing more with the same. And that's a fairly straightforward ask. You do have to work on your methodologies and such, but like ultimately you don't have to get as much buy-in from like other groups cross-functionally. The other side is if you're using it to justify marketing spend, to request additional marketing spend, or you're KPIing your demand gen managers. Up until the point, because we used to dream, and I think we still do, that we have some level of total targeted compensation that's tied to the revenue that marketing is driving. So when that is brought into the equation, getting buy-in from your general managers, from your finance groups is very important, and getting them to buy in on that methodology. So that's on the strategic front. And then on the tactical front is getting your core operational components really tight. So getting, understanding what your channels are, what your program status is, having a data definition of what those are defined as, and making sure that all of your marketers are using their best practice program templates, they're using program costs effectively, and that they're doing a lot of things well operationally upstream, like managing their managing UTMs, ensuring that everything is getting assigned to the right acquisition program, et cetera. And then determining kind of how you're going to do the reporting. So there's a number of ways you can do it. I've done it in Revenue Explorer. Standard first touch reporting, multi-touch reporting. Again, buy-in on the methodology and how it's used is very critical, because you can do a lot of really cool analysis with attribution, but if you don't have stakeholders buying into the numbers that you're presenting, it's just a lot of data geek stuff. And that goes whether you're going with Revenue Explorer, you're just doing basic multi-touch, like channel-based or program-based reporting, or if you're bringing in Marketo Measure. And I would recommend, and I haven't used Marketo Measure myself, but based on things I've heard from fellow champs, this is not a set it and forget it tool where you don't have an admin. You do need to have admins dedicated to Marketo Measure to use it effectively because of the sophistication of the data and the analytics there. Would anybody else add to what I had mentioned? I know, Lauren, you're kind of nodding at a couple of things.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I love the fact that you start off by thinking of attribution as a way to justify budget, right? So like attribution is fuzzy. We know that, right? So people are going to come visit a LinkedIn ad on their desktop and abandon, and then maybe later look you up directly on mobile, and that attribution gets lost. But without having some kind of model to measure ROAS across platforms, we don't have a decisioning tool And when we get attribution crisp enough, the payoff is that we can accurately forecast and predict against our numbers to say, hey, if this is the target, reverse math tells me that my cost per MQL, my cost per SAL, my cost per close one looks like this. So if you need to get to X, I need Y budget, right? Because so often I think the forecasting exercise is disconnected from attribution. And when sales calls the number, we don't necessarily have a tie into whether or not our budget is sufficient to get us there. And I think a lot of people avoid attribution because it seems like a slippery slope for accountability. But in essence, it's the vital way that you need to make decisioning to do the right things by the business and to get your job done. That's definitely the full picture. And I love that you started from that angle.
Well, I love that you mentioned accountability, because ultimately, like, if marketing is going to elevate ourselves as a revenue driver, ultimately we have to sign up for accountability. And that's a tough conversation in marketing groups.
Yeah. And that's what I love. I think I've seen you talk about being RevOps before RevOps was cool. And I feel like similar star stuff, it's like, but having that seat at the revenue table, back when Maria Pergolino was at the helm and CMO, earning a seat at the revenue table was the mantra that got Marketo noticed in the SaaS world early on. And I really think, it's such a powerful way to be marketing led as an organization. And it gives you credibility with sales if you can speak to the number and lean into the number. It's not the easiest motion to make it first, but it's what makes you vital to the organization, and I love that. But I'd love to hear any thoughts from any other champs on attribution. Anybody else?
I just wanted to add that when you're working with multiple teams that are writing content, that are running paid ads, that are in charge of social channels, make sure that everyone's in line on the structure and how they write up the UTM parameters, which UTM parameters are being used. And I suggest that it should be your function to provide this kind of data. We have implemented it across the company a few years ago, and it really helped us to stream out the data to make sure that we don't have errors, we don't have data that's not being read correctly by the system, and really it helps a lot. And I strongly suggest to implement it upon inheriting the instance on initial setup.
It's such a good point. And UTMs can be so fragile, like make sure they're standardized, right? So if your agency or your paid search and social, admin isn't putting in Facebook, and is putting in FB, you're going to lose so much attribution and not have a good idea of how that channel is performing. So due diligence and maintenance and almost like hypervigilance over that structure is super critical.
That's amazing. Thanks, guys. Okay, moving to the next question. I don't want to take away from that question because actually I want to say, I do just want to kind of add to that piece that I think that that's one of those things that when you start to progress working with Marketo, it's always that piece there that you're like, I'll get to it. And I love conversations like this because that's exactly what it's going to start to do, is spark these ideas to say, okay, it's time for me to sit and look at this. I need to start to build out a framework and look at how this is working or how I can build it if we don't have anything. Because it's one of those things that is once you have an idea of how your instance is really breathing, then you start to kind of take it on and say, okay, how can I do this? So this is really great, guys. Okay, next question. What is the best way to institute a standardized lead scoring process across different business units and different products? Lauren, do you have some ideas on this to share?
Sure, I'd be happy to get a conversation started on the topic. For lead scoring, I think many different iterations exist. I've seen letter and number scenarios. I've seen thresholds exclusively set arbitrarily at 100. I've seen lead scoring built by one well-intended soul in his basement and never kind of socialized before implementing. And I've seen analysis paralysis where giant enterprise orgs sit and try to over-architect every last data point that they could collect not realizing that that's not actually data that they do collect, and then wringing their hands about how their scoring model's incomplete. I can see Chris smiling. I think he's been down this road a couple times before too. But I think for me, having kind of come up with the evolution of the scoring model over the years, where I stand today is that I just like to see a healthy combination of demographics, firmographics, behavior, and intent, right? I feel like those are the essentials, and over-architecting in a vacuum is super dangerous. So on top of the 4 kind of key tenets to include in your model, what's more important is inclusion. Okay, marketing cannot, should not, will not succeed if they do this alone, because it's not intended for consumption by marketing, right? So what you're building needs to convey meaningful information. It's a conduit for revenue. It is not a cerebral exercise in a vacuum. It's meant to be useful to the people that receive it. And if they're not included in the process of developing it, it can very easily become noise. And when it becomes noise, if you're kicking over, huge quantities of MQLs, they'll get drowned. They won't know how to prioritize. They won't be able to triage. They don't understand what to use first. I'm still OG. I love my Marketo Sales Insight because it helps to communicate and triage and allows for inclusion in flagging target accounts or key stakeholders that might be in decision-making cycles. But developing a scoring model from jump with the people that are set to consuming it and making sure that it's consumable is the most vital part of the exercise. And then revisiting it. It's not a set and forget, it's iterative. And best practice, once a quarter. I know no one has time, but at least once or twice a year, going in and saying, okay, what are my high value web content pieces? Have they changed? Do I have an awesome new infographic or video or something that's really moving the needle for sales that needs to be included? Super vital that you revisit the architecture and the logic. And then, also too, data science is a wonderful thing, right? So what you think, your hypothesis around how scoring looks from anecdotal interaction and workshopping with sales and marketing at the same table, maybe the crankiest salesperson in your company and then the flag waving fan of marketing, are your guinea pigs, and you sit down with them because everybody else is going to fall in line if they're on board, right? But then bringing some data science to the table too, to look and say, okay, do my high value leads actually have propensity to turn into revenue? And looking at the data, I think those are the key components from my vantage point. But I'd love to hear, I see Darshil clapping, and I would love to hear his thoughts.
Lauren, thank you so much. So I really like your point that you need to start with the strategy rather than just starting out with the campaign creation first, and have all the people who are going to use that scoring model use those insights to drive the revenue. Basically, the sales people, the marketing people, have everybody on same page, get everybody on the same table, and based on everybody's inputs, come decide on the scoring model that is going to be working for all. That is so crucial in my opinion. So before you start creating a scoring model, I know when we get a new instance, we are so excited to start creating campaigns, create folders, create programs, stuff like that. But having those strategy discussions, so crucial, to be honest. And I have had worked in an instance with clients that do not care a lot about strategy until and unless they have they see the campaigns in their instance, they're fine with it. But that is so not gonna reap the benefits in long run. And they are going to come back saying that we do not have the marketing and sales aligned. A lot of people in our instance have high scores, but we when we contact to them, when our sales team are contacting to them, they are not responding, they are not converting and stuff like that. All of this happened because they did not have a proper strategy workshops before creating the campaigns, before creating the scoring criteria. And so I love the fact that keeping strategy before technical things is like you mentioned, is definitely a way to go with the scoring model. And most probably with everything else, right? Be it your buyer journey, be it your interesting moments, any operational setup that you create in Marketo, I would definitely love to have a strategy discussion before actually jumping in the instance and creating stuff.
That's so good. It's so true. And I think reevaluating that threshold, right? So if they're
Yeah.
calling the leads that hit 100, that's not a magic number. Maybe they're not ready to be talked to. So respecting the autonomy, maybe the outreach sequence is off-putting. Maybe the second at MQLs, there's an invasive phone call that's turning people off. I think thinking holistically from the buyer's journey instead of thinking about how awesome it is that we can build smart campaigns is super critical. Chris, I think you had your hand up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think I wanted to like echo a lot of things that you said. But one thing that I think when you're creating lead scoring models that has to be addressed is that lead scoring is not for marketing. Lead scoring is to inform your sellers as to what's important, what's not important, and what the timing of significant good outreach is. And scoring can't be done in a vacuum. A seller doesn't know what 100 means. Like ultimately, your boots on the ground, if they see 100 or 150 or 99 or however you're like running your numeric model, that really means nothing to them. So that's why like things like interesting moments, and yes, I am OG, and I preach the value of MSI to my sellers all of the time. The interesting moments, the context behind the interesting moments are probably more important to them than the scoring itself. The scoring just basically heat maps people. So, and think, you know, you need to think about that as a marketer. And I'll say something a little bit somewhat blasphemous for some of us as a marketing groups, but I've started to question the arbitrary threshold.
Yes.
And really think about like, should marketing and sales be partners in the lead journey rather than we just hand off leads and say, here you go, you know, here's your 100-point lead. Good luck. Like, I don't believe that's an effective alignment strategy, and we need to rethink that entire approach. And the way we do that is by heat mapping and providing good data that sales values. And that's ultimately how, you know, how you build good lead scoring models are going to drive revenue forward rather than just kind of delivering a bunch of MQLs, if you will. And yes, I am wearing the MQL SQL OMG shirt.
I love it. I think that's such a good point because we're in an age where relevance is going to be highly contingent on personalization. And if we're using this blanket 100 and doing the same process for everybody, it's just super generic and super kind of almost company centric. Like we're like, okay, they're ready to talk to us. Have they really indicated that? Like, is it really the appropriate place and time to approach that? We love them, but they don't even really maybe know who we are. And then that just makes a point of contention and sales stops believing you when you say this person is qualified, right? So I think the one size fits all model for just saying 100 sounds like a great number is rife with issues. But I definitely think if you incorporate the sales team in the conversation and they help to define what a great lead, a medium lead, the ideal person that's ready for a conversation tomorrow that they would love to hop on a phone and chat with versus a tire kicker that needs to stay in nurture. If they're bought in that process, they feel more included and they understand what that 100 means. But then to your point, if you toss over an interesting moment, not only do they feel bought in and understand what 100 means or whatever, they also have a conversation starter. They know what to talk about that's relevant and personalized to the human instead of just looking at the person on the receiving end as an MQL, right? Or an SAL. Cool.
Lauren, I just wanted to add a small technicality regarding the demographic scoring, because what I think is important is when you're starting to promote a new product and you've spoken to a sales team and they think they know who's your ideal buyer, but until you have a few hundred contracts that came from your inbound activities, you don't really know who your ICP is. And a lot of times it's trials and errors, and it's good to have weekly things and talk to your sales team ask them, let's look at MQLs one by one. Do you think these are the right people? And adjust. And I would suggest in the first few months of your marketing activity to look more on the behavior than demographic. And also, I'm coming from B2B campaign management, and what I suggest is to not look so much at the titles which you find relevant, because a lot of times companies would mean completely different things by having the same titles. Like I get often reached out to on LinkedIn with questions on matters that I have no idea about, and like I've never worked in that area. And sometimes I'm thinking to myself, are those people just reaching out to everyone, or do they think that I have the relevant title and like that's how they decided to reach out to me? And instead use function and seniority, because that will help you better understand who the person is and if they match your ICP profile. That's
so
all I wanted
smart.
to add.
That's so smart. I actually had a really interesting exercise at a startup where we were building out scoring and working on sales and marketing alignment like daily. And we realized our existing customer profile wasn't our ideal customer profile. And so I'm sitting here photocopying, MQLs based on the assumption that our customers are profitable and optimized against churn and for retention. And we were selling into categories that had high turnover and low margins. And it took that very exercise that you're describing to kind of think outside the box, to lift yourself up and out, to think about what you're doing at a higher level, even than just, kind of scoring. So I love the call out about ICP and asking questions of it.
Amazing. I just want to say we've had some really great questions coming in on chat, and I really want to thank you, Champs, because while one of you guys is answering, the other one's answering questions in the chat, and it's really amazing to have this kind of back and forth. But a question has come in overall, and I want to throw this out to all the champs. Were you all seeking out professional development this year? What conferences and events are you attending? What blogs, podcasts, etc. are you listening to? Basically, what is catching your interest from a professional development point of view out in the industry, and share that with everybody. Anybody go for it. Jump in.
I'll go ahead and start. So probably the two places that I like looking to this year is like within my my marketing ops communities or my rev ops communities. So obviously this is a huge value add of the Marketo Champ program, and I have a lot of folks that are mentors that within this program. So shameless plug for those wanting to apply for the Marketo Champion program, as well as being involved in the MOPS Pros and the marketingops.com communities. There's some really awesome people that are thought leaders that are looking very holistically through MOPS, that help me keep my my skills pretty sharp. And then the second is I'm actually this year really seeking out mentorships within my company. Like I'm looking at advancing up and learning to be a better corporate citizen in my organization, which I think I do a decent job of, but we can all improve on our leadership skills, and seeking those mentors internally that I can kind of bounce ideas off of, share things that frustrate me, and get advice on how to navigate some of the organizational stuff. That's me.
I can go next. So at this point, honestly, I do not follow a lot of podcasts, but I do log into Marketing Nation community a lot. I read people's questions. I try to answer some of the questions, also read Sandy's answers. So to me, that is the daily dose of learning, the technical learning that I go on and learn. Apart from that, I know a lot of people are there on LinkedIn. They're posting a lot of cool MOPS strategy, MOPS technical related things. So I spend a little time surfing through some of the MOPS leaders and MOPS, the OG MOPS experts posts, see what their thoughts are. So as of now, I need to admit that I am a lot more technical than I am a lot more into strategy. So I'm also building the strategy related expertise as of now, along with the technical expertise that I have and work on it every day. So, but yeah, definitely in near future, I would definitely start listening to some of the podcasts. I know those are there are some really great podcasts out there that discuss a lot of marketing strategy, MOPS best practices, etc. So a lot of resources there as well. And there are some Slack channels, I believe the MOPS professionals channel that I am subscribed and part of. So I am not very much active, but I do log into the channel, read people's messages, read their thoughts. So a lot of learnings come from there too.
And I'd happily go next and say that I follow the people on this call, for heaven's sake. And I'm loving the shout outs for Darshil's newsletter and the chat. But
oh, sorry, I didn't read that.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
You got some kudos there, well deserved.
Awesome.
But in addition, I've been nerding out on AI in Coursera, and there's like Stanford classes, you guys, and they're free. And it's so vital and relevant that we don't turn away from the topic. The sooner we harness it, it's just like Marketo in 2011. People were scared that would replace jobs and create obsolescence, but the sooner you harness the power, the faster you're able to share that knowledge with the community and empower everybody. So been into that. Hannah Jackover, she's amazing. She's an HR spirit out of the Bay Area that I've been delighted to have in my space and sphere for a number of years now, but she's been really dropping the inspiration bombs for me in a leadership perspective. Chris Walker from Refine Labs, I love his paid search and social insights, even if he is somewhat controversial sometimes. And CMO superhero over at 6 Sense, Latini Conant, love her thought leadership, love her books. But yeah, I think that's just a small sample set, but people that definitely have been inspiring me lately.
I think this community has been super helpful, and I love how Champions very active on Slack, and anytime someone has a question on setup, technical question, or pretty much anything, we always have a great community to discuss it with. So strongly recommend joining the championship program. And also there's Marketo user groups, they're local, most of them are in the US. In Israel, we have an MOPS group. It's not only on Marketo, like we normally discuss different issues that other MOPS professionals are experiencing in different platforms. We talk about automations. Marketo has an automation group in Israel as well. It's local. I'm talking a lot about Israel because I'm located here. So if anyone's also coming from this area, you guys are welcome to join. And like these are the main local ones. Also, there's a Salesforce conference coming up on June 20th. So whoever hasn't signed up, it's free. Go ahead. There's going to be discussion on Marketo and marketing automation as a whole. I did not attend the Adobe conference this year in the US. Unfortunately, we didn't have a budget like a lot of companies, but it was amazing to attend it virtually. And if anyone can share recordings, then this is a great too.
Amazing. From my side, I just want to share 2 podcasts that I'm enjoying right now that are more, when you're like just doing something and you're working and you want like things going on in the background, but you still want to be learning. So they're a bit fun, a bit like conversational. So I'm enjoying Pretty Funny Business, which is led by some previous Marketo champions, and it's more conversational, and then thought leaders that you may follow on LinkedIn, just sharing personal stories and anecdotes. So that one's really great. And I've been enjoying, what's it called again? Unsubscribed, I think it's called, by the NAC co-founder, also Revenue Pulse co-founder, Pierce. And I've only listened to like one podcast, I think, by that, but I really liked it. And so they're just more, if you're looking for something that's kind of like in that wider industry, and I love podcasts, I love diving in, and I definitely love like the more conversational pieces on podcasts when they're interviewing people that are talking about their own experiences and stories. And I love when somebody shares a moops, right? Like any kind of accidental thing that you can learn from, and you're like, you've just stopped me from definitely making that same mistake in the future, or where you can say, I've been there and lived in those shoes. So those are two I enjoy, but we'll, I think it would be a great idea to actually also reach out to our wider champ community, ask them this question because it's so relevant right now, and there'll be so many different answers, and maybe we can pull that together in a blog post and add it in here or on the champ community. So I think that would be a great follow-up. Okay, so next question. So talking about campaign operations, Jane, I want to come to you with this one. When you're looking at web content programs, is it worth troubleshooting things that are like over 2 years old, issues that may arise that are over a certain point or just seem like they're not as relevant now?
Thank you, Courtney. And well, really, it depends. When we're looking at the web content programs, like whether you inherited this instance and you already had different assets in it that you want to check for, and you see errors depending on whether those errors resulted from a form fill out, and you are going to continue using those forms, I strongly suggest checking for those and fixing them, of course. If these are deliverability issues, I would run a campaign just to test if they still persist, and definitely worth to fix them as well. If we're talking about leads that came from those campaigns, and they're over 2 years old, I would probably look to sales. I would align and see if this is still relevant. And if these are, you could again run a campaign to see what those errors are. If the errors resulted from wrong input data, let's say you have a country, number of employees or company size and created date synced into Salesforce, and these are the crucial fields for the lead to sync, then check that the format matches, that you're using the right fields. Usually these are the most common errors that I came across. And yeah, like, you know, always see if it's worth your investment. And definitely I recommend setting up a lead cleanup campaigns in your data in your Marketo instance. And that's something that you should keep as an evergreen program and go back to it every so often to check if there are leads with the wrong data, leads without emails, those that can be processed at all. And clean this data regularly. I think there will be more questions on the data cleanup coming, so we'll go back to it later. Do you guys have other comments on that?
Okay, cool. I will then move on, like staying in this like campaign operations realm. We had quite a few questions come in around this, so let's dive into more. Can Marketo send me alerts when a batch campaign is finished processing? Darshil, what do you think?
I don't think so. We can set up the alerts for, like that go out when a batch campaign is finished processing. The platform provides an option to, send yourself an alert. You can subscribe to the campaign failure notification. So if there are any issues with the campaign processing in between, you get an automated alert from the platform itself. But apart from that, because a lot of campaigns do run, in an instance, in an enterprise level instance. So most likely, if you are able to subscribe to those, you'll probably be, spammed with a lot of emails. So what I would like to suggest here is to log into Marketo instance. There's campaign queue feature. Basically, you can, go at the tab. Basically, it is in the marketing activities. You need to select your default workspace, and then as soon as you select it, there's a campaign queue option, the tab. In the campaign queue, you can see all your trigger campaigns, all your batch campaigns as they are processing live. So you can like really look at the campaign queue, the campaigns that are done processing that are, have like X amounts of leads in the queue and stuff like that. So I would definitely suggest, checking the campaign queue in order to get the idea about the, is the campaign done processing or not. And of course, at the campaign level, you can just go at the campaign level, the campaign homepage, the first landing page that you see when you click on a campaign, there's an option to see like view all the runs, and that you can also see if the campaign is done processing or not. So that is usually how I find out if the campaign is done processing, how many leads are pending and stuff like that.
Perfect, thank you. How about, okay, how do I send an email blast to a specific list of emails? Lauren, can you take this one away?
Okay, I think I just knocked it out in chat there, but
perfect.
yeah, just making sure that I answered the question for the person that was asking. I think Darshil and I both kind of jumped on that one. If Barbara, you have any more questions, just feel free to shoot a direct message, or you could even, I think, Courtney, unmute here and ask of us if you'd like, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. If anybody wants to, I can't see right now the extra hands being raised, but I'll change my view in just a minute. Or if anybody wants to.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to this, because I've seen this use case happen a number of times where an email blast may be being sent out on like behalf of a sales rep or based on some very specific niche data within Salesforce. And again, assuming your Salesforce is your CRM, you can set up a Salesforce campaign and have people have your sellers or your marketing team add people specifically to that campaign, and then use a member of SFDC filter in your smart campaign. So I think that was one thing that might be the only thing that may not have been mentioned, but I know that happens from time to time. So you want to take that approach rather than, I've seen groups like export like Salesforce reports and then try to re-import them into a static list. And that could be fairly problematic. So use the Salesforce campaign sync to its full advantage. It does have a lot of power in allowing you to hyper target lists.
But if you do use a static list, make sure that you use the right attribution. So when you upload that list, it doesn't get synced in as an inbound lead. Because like usually if you're importing a list, that's probably leads that you got from the outbound events or from sales. So I would definitely recommend checking your attribution for that.
Amazing. Jane, I'm going to stick with you here. Thanks for chiming in. I've got another question for you. So again, around content management, best practices for content management in Marketo is specifically to enable good reporting and gaining some actionable insights.
Great question. I think that the best way to manage your content in Marketo is by putting it into the buckets of evergreen and campaign. Evergreen would be anything that's reusable. That could be in campaigns based on the ebooks, white papers, demo requests, free trials, something that happens all the time. And again, if that's content based, then make sure that you're checking your content once in a while to make sure it's still relevant, that your ebook doesn't say 2021 and 2023 and so on and so forth. And it really helps to manage it consistently and not having to duplicate programs all the time. You can manage them all from one program. You can use one form for all ebooks, one form for all white papers, and that really helps to spend less time on managing data and to avoid mistakes. While time-based campaigns could be created in a separate folder, and then you can duplicate them and change the assets as you create new events, new webinars, whatever is time-based that you're working on. That's definitely best practice, and that's something that has helped me in my career to keep things on track. Anyone wants to add something?
Okay, great. I'll move on to this will be our final question around campaign operations. Then we'll kind of shift it up and pull some more in here. But Darshil, for you, some nurture stream tips. What's the best practice when somebody becomes exhausted?
So there are a few options that a market user can implement in their instance, and this is more of a strategic question than a technical question, because from the technical standpoint of view, you need to just have a campaign that would move people to a different stream or add to a list based on the requirement. So lots of options, and I would like to lay out here. So for some clients that I have worked with, they usually have a series of a specialized content that they send out to people who are cold, that haven't responded to a lot of emails, haven't progressed further in their buyer journey. So they have a separate dedicated stream wherein they have the specific content for the unengaged leads. So one option would be to add those exhausted leads to that stream, so they just start receiving the unengaged or the cold lead email content. Basically, the another option would be to add them to a separate dedicated drip track that sends out. So for example, if your nurture cadence is set to send out an email once every week or on a bi-weekly basis, you can have a drip track that would send emails once every month. Or maybe like as I said earlier, this is really a strategic question based on what is working for you, based on what industry you are in. This time here, this duration on the cadence would definitely change. So there is another option. And the last the last option that I could think of is to have those leads sit in the stream, the exact same stream itself. So if you have any new content that you would like to send it to them, you can directly add that content into the stream, and in the next cast, those people who would have exhausted in the earlier cast will receive that content because they wouldn't have received it earlier. So I think these are some of the options that usually marketers choose in order to engage or in order to work with the exhausted leads in the nurture.
Amazing, thank you. Chris, I'm gonna kick it over to you for this next one. So when setting up a field in Salesforce that already exists in Marketo, will the field sync to Marketo quickly? Will the blank data in Salesforce overwrite existing Marketo data? If so, what are ways to prevent this? And just general best practice when you're talking about field syncing.
No, thank you very much. So I'm going to take this with the approach that you have a I'll take this with two approaches. So one, you have a Marketo only field and you want to sync it with Salesforce. So that would be scenario number one. And then scenario number two is you want to create a new field, a net new field, and you want to make sure that that field is synced between Marketo and Salesforce. I believe your question is more like tied to option number one. And we're encountering some of this today. So we're thinking through some of these architectural items. So ultimately you have your Marketo only field. And at the end of the day, you're going to go to you're going to go to your Salesforce administrator. You're going to go through the steps to make sure that to create a Salesforce version of that field. And I would use the same display label because that's going to help you as you go through the merge process. And you want to make sure that that field is replicated on both the lead and the contact records in Salesforce, because we do expect that leads will convert to contacts. And like Marketo's concept of a person actually encompasses both the Salesforce lead and contact. So you have to think about the person holistically, not just as a, when something lands in Salesforce as a lead or lands as a contact. So those fields do sync to Marketo every 5 minutes. So the Marketo Salesforce sync is essentially syncing every 5 minutes. And essentially Marketo is looking for any updates from the Salesforce database. So new fields that were added, new records that were created, or records that were updated. And Marketo looks at the system mod stamp from the record in Salesforce to determine what it's going to sync, what it's not going to sync. When the field syncs over to Marketo, essentially you're going to have a difference in the API name. So field A, this Marketo only, is still going to exist, and then field B will get created with the Salesforce API name, and you should be able to denote it because it'll have an __C by it. So at that point, you need to merge the fields, and so that's ultimately an exercise that happens with Marketo support. You'll write a Marketo support ticket and say, I want to merge this field A with this Salesforce field B that was created. So to the question of overwrite of data, so I might defer to some of my colleagues on the call. I'm going to use kind of like the basic conflict rules that exist today and kind of guide you there. So if your record is on a Salesforce lead and you have a conflict, the Marketo data will win in a lead scenario. If your Salesforce data is on a contact, the Salesforce contact data will be the winner, and that essentially determines like what data gets kept and what data will be removed. I would recommend that you do a data comparison exercise before you do this merge action to make sure you don't lose any data. So in scenario number 2, you want to sync a record from Salesforce to Marketo. Do not create the lead in Marketo, or do not create the record in the field name in Marketo. So ultimately, if you're syncing a field, like you want the Salesforce records to be your source of truth for like the field name, the API name. You want your Salesforce administrator to create that on all of the Salesforce objects that are going to be part of your revenue stream, and let the every 5-minute sync that record over, and then based upon the same field name, it will essentially create one version of the field that will map it to both the lead and the contact. That is going to be your cleanest way for creating new fields for your revenue operations database overall. So would anybody have anything to add to that? Especially, I'm happy to be proven wrong on the sync rules item, but I was just kind of regurgitating what's on, the experience lead.
Well regurgitated indeed, my friend. I think that was well said. And no, I think you're spot on. This has flown by. What fun. Gee, can't believe.
I know, we've only got a few minutes left. I'm going to throw this one out there, and we may be able to answer that on the call, or it could be something that we're able to go away and then provide details on if nobody's used it. But to all the champs, has anybody used the Everest Validity email deliverability tool in Marketo? Our team would really like to know how many of our emails actually end up in the inbox versus spam or another unfocused folder. Has anybody used that, or other tools, or any processes that you can share?
I worked with a client that used the validity for their monitoring, basically the email deliverability monitoring and analysis. So I think it gave a fair result when it came to analyzing how emails are landing in the inbox versus spam, versus how many emails are actually missing for different ISPs, be it your Outlook 365, be it your Gmail, Amazon, AWS Workspace, etc. So there is I think one of the most accurate tool that you can purchase. There are other smaller companies that I also worked with that provide the same feature set, but I think with regards to the accuracy, I would definitely trust validity over the others. So the way that this works is they have a seed list of records that you need to send out an email on a daily basis from your Marketo instance. So the seed list of records are actually the records that the platform analyzes, and they are tied to different ISPs, and based on the email received that you basically sent out from Marketo campaign, it would be able to determine how in general your emails that you're sending out from Marketo to recipients using different ISPs, using different clients, email clients are actually receiving those emails. Basically, are they landing in your in their inbox, in their spam folders? Are they not getting delivered itself, or are they getting quarantined, etc.? So I think validity does give a fair understanding, and of course understanding in terms of how your emails are going to be received by the recipients. That is my experience. Anybody else have any sort of experience? Would love to hear.
All right, amazing. Thanks, Darshil. I think you're rounding it out for us, because we're just coming up now on the hour. This has been incredible. We've got through a lot of questions. I know we've got through a lot of questions in chat as well. Thank you, everybody who joined us this month. We hope you join us again next month. There'll be new questions. If you guys have questions, just know that you can submit them at the point that you RSVP, or anytime through the month, you can submit them, and we'll be able to take a look at those. And then also just thank you to my fellow champs. You guys are amazing. The knowledge that you share is incredible. And again, I just want to encourage anybody who's thinking about it to definitely apply for the Champ program. It could be you joining us for office hours in future office hours. So if you have any questions for that, let us know, and we'll see you guys next month.